Okay, we're on. So don't anybody say anything you can't defend in court, I guess. Okay. Okay, back to you, Susan.
No worry. So welcome everyone. As Ken said, this is very exciting and I'm so curious to know where everybody's from. So I'll kick it off and then I'll name the next person to introduce themselves, and then they can name the next person. And that way, because I think everybody is positioned differently on the screen depending on, when you logged in. So my name is Susan Van Allen. I'm the president of the Parke Society, and I've been involved for, gosh, a long time. I have no idea how long I've been a member, but and I am here in Haverford, Pennsylvania. So I'm on the East Coast, and it is a little after 1 in where I am. So I'm going to ask that Gay, you're next to me, so I'm going to have you introduce yourself, and then you can pick somebody after that.
Okay. Well, my name's Gay Oliver. It's up on the screen there. So I'm the local family history leader for our local group, which is east of Manchester in the UK. Okay.
Would you like to pick somebody who can go?
Oh, sorry, I forgot. Right. Can I pick on Becky Bill?
Yeah, so I'm Bill Parke. I'm just borrowing my wife's computer. I live in Wiltshire in the UK and recently joined, but my descendants come from Aberdeenshire. I'm from that branch of the Parks. And this is my first meeting, and looking forward to see what happens.
Right.
So if I could pass on to George Parke.
Good evening, good afternoon. Hi. Excuse me. I've actually been part of the society since I joined FT Family Tree DNA, which Ken didn't realize at the time when he contacted me. I was born in South Africa, but my father was from Aberdeen in Scotland. And I presently live in a village called Lake and Heath next to the 48th Wing Air Force Base, the American Military Air Force Base.
Welcome.
All right. Ken, over to you.
Oh, back to me?
Yeah.
Back to you, yeah. Sorry.
Okay. My name's Ken Parks. I'm vice president of the society at the DNA administrator, and I live in New York State, up sort of a little bit northwest of New York City in the Catskills, and probably more than you want to know. Over to you, Wilma.
Hello. Hi, I'm Wilma Handley, and I live in Edmond, Oklahoma. I'm a trustee for the Park Society, and I'm in several lineage organizations, and it was through my research into my park line that I discovered Ken and joined this society, and I'm happy to meet all of you. Suzanne DeRay.
I want to get out of it. Oh,
I'm Suzanne DeRay. I live in Omaha, Nebraska, and I've got all this paperwork, but I'm not really sure where my branch originates. I jotted down 2T1, 3T2, and T2, whatever that means. So I'm interested in knowing more about this. I did order this online a few years ago. I'm sure some of you probably have this. So I'm part of the branch that went to Vermont and then on to Nebraska. Nice to meet all of you.
Nice to have you here. Tag somebody.
Oh, I've got to find names here. How about Daryl Parks?
Yes, I'm Daryl Parks from Illinois. And typically you think of Chicago, and I want to say, no, I'm as far away from Chicago as you can get and still be in Illinois.
Figure out how to name us.
It's at the extreme southern end of Illinois. And if you follow the Mississippi River north from New Orleans, and as soon as you hit Illinois, I'm about 35 miles from that area. So strictly Midwestern. And to pass it on, everybody that I'm seeing here is talk, so I'm not sure who else is.
So why don't we go to Marion?
Yes, hi there.
My name is Marion Horrick. My maiden name is Parke, plain old P-A-R-K, no embellishments, from a large family in Glasgow, Scotland. I was born there. My father was one of 7 sons. His father was James Maxwell Mackenzie Parke, and he was given the same name. I live in Hamilton, Ontario, near Toronto. I emigrated in the mid-70s. And 3 of my male cousins, I have 17 cousins, first cousins in the Parke family. They're all in the UK now. 3 of them have done the Y-DNA test, which has linked me to all of you. Let me choose
Well,
Melinda?
that might be a good segue to go to John Parke, since he's responsible
here?
for.
Yes.
Sure. John, are
Yes,
you with?
John.
I'm related to Marion's family, albeit very distantly, probably. We don't have any idea of how many cousins away. My Parke family is from Ballinure Parish in County Antrim, and we're collectively known as Group 34 in the Parke Society project. Nice to see you all.
One of these.
Great. Sarah Chandler.
No.
Hi, everybody. My name is Sarah Chandler. I'm descended from Roger Parke from Lancashire to Hopewell, New Jersey, and his line went down to West Virginia, and my great-grandfather was heading west when he happened to die in Missouri, but his descendants ended up in Colorado, which is where I grew up, but I immigrated to Canada in 1980, and I now live in British Columbia on the west
Let me
coast.
click around, I can find it.
Small town in the mountains. It's Parke, P-A-R-K-E, and it's lovely to be here. Thank you. Catherine Clifford.
Hello, everyone. Sarah, I thought you might choose me. That's so funny because we both have a Clifford line. And I thought I was going to choose you and you beat me to it. Anyway, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Catherine Clifford. I live in Orlando, Florida. I'm a member of a number of genealogical societies. Gary Parke is the leader of my Parke line. We don't know a whole lot about it. He's still working on it. Otherwise, I'm thrilled to see our Parke people from the UK. I go over there a bit, so I love to see y'all online. And that's it from me. Let's see. Who hasn't spoken?
Oh, Lou?
Lou? Okay, we can go with that.
Oh, hello. I'm Lou T-Rock. I am the treasurer of the Parke Society, and I'm also the lineage leader for the Thomas of Virginia line, the C line. I live in Portage, Indiana, which is at the very southwest tip of Lake Michigan. Welcome to everyone. This is wonderful to see so many people here today.
Certainly is.
So, Pamela, you are next on my list of kind of been going through that. So would you introduce yourself?
I am Pamela. My maiden name is Parke. You guys discovered me through my dad's DNA, Calvert Parke, who has passed away, so can't get a big Y test on him. And I'm descended from the Revolutionary War patriot James Parke, who was in Virginia and then moved to Greensboro, Georgia. And I'm still trying to locate how James Parke and family got to America, and currently working with the colonial dames to see if I can find out any information if they arrived here, you know, before the 1600s, after the 1600s. And I've lived in most of the states in the United States, so including Orlando and Chicago.
Oh. Karina.
Well, hello. This is my very first Parke meeting because I grew up a Robinson, and it wasn't until I was working as a genealogist at Ancestry.com that I showed my DNA results, my brother's DNA results, to the genetic genealogist Angie Bush, and she said, "You might want to get in touch with Ken Parks about your DNA."
So glad she did.
So my connection to the parks are through my great-grandfather, who was apparently the product of a very generous park family donor in southern Indiana. And, it was through the blessing of my brother and my uncle's DNA that I'm joining you here today.
Welcome.
Okay. Now on my screen right next to there, even though it says Terry Whitman, there's our cousin Tom Parks. How
Yes.
about you?
Yes. Terry is the genealogy expert in the family, but I'm I'm related to the Parks family through, it goes way back, I guess, to the Revolutionary War. I believe you discovered, Ken.
Yeah, and now we know even further back. So all of you, UK Aberdeenshire lines, we're genetically related.
Right. Right. Mostly what I know about my family was started with my grandfather, who was born in Vicksburg, Mississippi, I guess, right at the start of the Civil War. And yes. Okay. Here's the expert here. Yeah.
Yes. Let's see, Larry Peck, are you with us here? Can you?
Yeah, I think so. Can you hear me?
Yeah, yes. We can hear you.
All right, my name is Larry Peck. I descend from Robert Parke from Lancastershire. I am living in North Idaho, 95 miles south of Canada.
Welcome.
Okay. Below that, I see Patrick, one of our faithful attendees.
Hello.
Hello.
Patrick Parks from Kansas City, Missouri, and parts west, California, and Lincoln, Nebraska. So Suzanne and I might have something to talk about. Yeah.
Let's see, just going through Cindy Park.
Yes, Cindy Park calling in from Oregon. I'm descendant from Roger Park, and one of his offshoots, Makaja, went west, and all of Makaja's kids went west, and I grew up a Westerner, never thinking I had anything to do with the East. So this has been enlightening, and did join several of the society's meetings in the last couple of years, but it's been at least a year since I think I've been on. And we were having conversations at that time. You were all talking about, we need to expand our membership. And wow, I guess that's what I'm seeing here.
We hope.
It's stunning. There's no room for everybody on one line. And it used to happen that you had room. So congratulations.
Let's see. Sandra McCoy, are you
hello.
there?
Yes, I'm here. Hello.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, that's good. Yes, I'm Sandra McCoy. My maiden name was Sandra Park. I'm a cousin of John. So my dad was James Park of Ballymuir, County Antrim, Northern Ireland.
Welcome.
Well,
Thank you very much.
We're just jumping around here. Melinda Park McGregor. Are you there? We'll get back to her.
Melinda's got something in the chat to say that she's on no camera and no microphone. She's just listening.
Okay.
Oh, okay. Scott, you're on mute, but you want to chime in here? Say hello.
Hello again. Ken, you and I last saw each other in the New England Genealogical Historical Society Library, right when you were just getting started with the Park Society and just getting started with this DNA project. You were working on. I'm with from the Robert and Levon Parks of Ohio branch, and I'm coming to find out, Ken, what have you figured out for us? So that's what I want to find out. So here we go.
Don't put me on the spot today.
Yeah. And I'm here. I'm in Omaha, Nebraska, and my grandfather Harry Henderson was and his mother were avid genealogy, family history purveyors, and I'm the keeper of the tubs. I've got all the tubs of the stuff over the years that I've accumulated and also helped dig deeper into the Genealogical Society libraries. And it's always good to see others out there.
Oh, we're glad to have you. Ken, down in the corner on my screen.
Ken Mavey.
And maybe
It does-
not, right? I'm sure you've heard that corny joke way too many times, right?
Many times, yes. I'm in Greene County, New York, upstate New York, and my current house sits on the property of my great-great-grandfather, John Parke, who came from Ireland in 1845. He and his wife, Isabella, were married in Drumcliff, Sligo, and in 1845, and they arrived here in America, in New York City in 1846, June 1846. And his father was Roger Parke, and the story in the family is that they were originally English, but they were in Ireland at the time, and John Parke and all his siblings were born in County Sligo, Ireland. And I think the place that they came from was, let me just look on my other screen here. Castlegal, and they were from Castlegal early on, and the first four children were they must have been living near Sligo because they were the first four children were baptized in St. John's Union in Sligo, and the last one was Roger Parks Jr., and he was baptized in Drumcliff churchyard in County Sligo. And John and Isabella were married in that particular church, which I've been to on 2 occasions. So pretty much that's my story. Okay. But I don't have a lot of information about Roger, and other than his wife's name was Eleanor Foley, and that someplace back in his background they were English, but they were in Ireland at the time that I pick up on their trail. And there are so many John and Roger Parks in Ireland, Scotland, and England, it's pretty hard to tell. John, I have all of his, because he's the immigrant who came. I have all of his family pretty much.
Well, we're very familiar with the common given name syndrome. I think we can all identify with that. Thanks for being here. Linda, have we heard from you, Linda Patterson?
Not yet.
Okay.
Linda Patterson from Fairhaven, New Jersey. I'm descended through my maternal grandmother was Edith Parke, and one of 14 children, and her line goes back to Robert, born in 1580, and Martha Chaplin, and further. I was aware of this line back in the 1950s. I didn't really get serious into genealogy until I retired in 1990s, and have been active ever since, publishing family history books for my descendants.
Sounds good. All right.
My sister and I did go to the reunion back in Wethersfield because that was of interest to us.
Well, now, I'm not sure I'm seeing everybody on the screen. So if there's anybody who hasn't spoken up, just feel free to just jump in, because
we've got a couple on the second page. I see, let's see, there's a Griffin's iPad 2, Dave and Deb Parke, Sandy Parke, and then Tanya's iPhone.
I haven't spoken up yet.
Oh, and Tad.
Yep. Hi, I'm Michael Tad Parks. I commonly go by Tad here, and I'm the historian, exec director for the society, and I'm in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And we had snow overnight, not much, but it ain't going to stay because it's going to get up into the 40s today. which is good. That means we aren't going to shovel it at this point. And so I'm a priest in the Episcopal Church, and it's tight, but I can get here by noon. But I have to hustle my butt, from church. So if we went any earlier, I'd be in trouble. That's it. So, okay, so that's my story.
So going to the second page, I see, so who's Griffin's iPad 2?
That's me, Griffin Park. I was born in Birmingham, Alabama, and most of my family was from that area, Alexander City, and now I'm a resident of the Myrtle Beach area, South Carolina. First time here. I don't quite know how to do these things. This is only the second time I've ever done a Zoom, so.
Well, you made it.
Yes, you made it.
I had a little bit of difficulty getting started there, but anyway, I'm I guess a relative of the James Park, pre-1700 into Prince Edward, Virginia, I think is where they first migrated to over here. And apparently I've been in touch with John Park and communicating with him, and somewhere in Ireland. I can't remember the name, but a relation to Pamela. I've discussed with her, hey there, and communicated with John and Pamela. Those are the only two I've communicated with. But anyway, here I am.
Well, we're glad you're here.
Welcome.
Welcome.
Hey.
Then we've got Dave and Deb Park.
Hey, everybody. So, yeah, Dave and Deb Park, we're in Selinsgrove, Pennsylvania, and just a couple of hours from the Watkins Glen area, which is where we trace our roots back to David Park, and then James, and then there's lots of discussion. Is it Robert? Is it Roger? Is it Alexander? I don't know, but I'm looking forward to today's geography lesson. So is it Ireland or is it Scotland? And if you talk to Gary Parks, it's Scotland, but maybe it's Ireland or whatever.
Or all of the above.
Yes.
Yeah, or all of the above. Yeah. So
yeah.
Thanks for putting this on. It's good.
Sure. So good to see you guys again.
Yeah. Then there's Sandy Park.
Is that Sandy Park Schneider?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I'm not, my camera's not working or something.
Yeah.
But anyway, I've been a society member for a little over 42 years, and my number is 574. I used to be a regional trustee. I live in too far from Tad. Years ago, he was at my house. I was actually at his house once. I've been working with John Parks over the last year or so. My
You're dropping out a little bit here, Sandy.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
You can, yeah.
Okay. Bought land in New York, lived in New York for several years. Then it was my great-grandfather that went to Minnesota. And then my grandfather moved my line of the family to Wisconsin. I had the foresight several years ago to have my brother do the YNA test. And with John Park encouragement, I went to the Big 700 last year. Don't know what else I can tell you.
Well, thanks for being here.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for having it.
I think the last person we haven't heard from is Tanya's iPhone.
No, I don't know how to do this.
We can hear you. We can hear you. Now you're muted. There you go. You're back.
Is it okay now? Oh,
yep.
okay. So I'm unmuted. All right. I am Tanya Winterburn. I am a Parks. I originate from Robert Park and Martha Chapin. And the rumor is that he was knighted and that it is a Sir Robert. And I just was trying to hope maybe we could figure out if he really was.
Well, Tad can weigh in, but we had a member a few years ago who published an article in our newsletter debunking that, and he did very, very, very good research about it. So I kind of say I don't want to rain on your parade, but I don't think that's true.
Oh, good. Well, I didn't really think it was, but yes. And I am from the Cyrenius Park. He had 14 children, and he was a loyalist in the Revolutionary War, him and his brother James. That's my line.
Okay. Well, if there's anybody else, if not, maybe we can get going with the presentation, and it's not terribly overly long. And then, so hopefully then at the other end, we'll have some more time to talk and visit. How's that sound?
Sounds good.
Okay. If you'll bear with me, because this old codger has sometimes a little technical challenge to do this, but we'll try to get my screen up here. And okay, here we go. Okay, is everybody seeing this?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, I'm going to minimize my screen over here. So, okay, well, so jumping in, and here we go, we're off to a great start. Jumping in, today's topic is about building a genetic map of the various park lineages in the British Isles. We'll take a look at where we stand in that effort and how we got there, then briefly explain the different methods we hope to use to continue filling out that genetic map. Though some of you are naturally focused on your own particular park lineage, I'm sure everyone's aware that there are many genetically unrelated park lineages out there, and that they've spread all across the globe over many years. What unites these lineages is, of course, a common surname or variant thereof, but also a common origin somewhere in the British Isles. While our surname unites us, what both unites us and separates us is, of course, DNA. We use DNA testing both to find the common connections between our various lineages, as well as to differentiate us from park lineages that are not genetically related to us. Well, we won't be going into any great detail about DNA testing here. Many of you are already familiar with it, and if anyone wishes more information about how we use DNA testing, feel free to reach out to us for advice on how to learn about this subject. Before we begin, if you're like this American, you may sometimes struggle with the different terms applied to locations in the British Isles. I stumbled upon this diagram just a few days ago and found it very helpful in understanding how the different terms you see here are related to each other. Well, the overarching description British Isles is a geographical description, as opposed to some which refer to national or governmental terms. Within this diagram, another geographical term, British Islands, which includes Great Britain and Ireland, along with the smaller islands, the Isle of Man and Jersey and Guernsey, the latter two also commonly referred to as the Channel Islands.
Not quite.
Within this group, we see the United Kingdom, or UK, which is comprised of Great Britain, England, Scotland, and Wales, and Northern Ireland. The island of Ireland is divided into Northern Ireland, part of the UK, and the independent Republic of Ireland. The three smaller islands of Jersey, Guernsey, and the Isle of Man are not part of the United Kingdom, but are considered crown dependencies. So I hope you find this helpful, as I did. So if we're talking about the British Isles today, why am I showing you a map of the eastern part of the North American continent in 1775? Well, I'm doing so by way of illustrating how we've been able to get to where we are today in this genetic mapping project. As you're aware, the British colonies that became the original 13 states of the United States, along with mainly the lower portion of Canada, were settled primarily, though certainly not exclusively, by British subjects. So our early Park lineages in North America have served as the foundation of both lineage information as well as genetic identification of the various Park lineages that came from the British Isles. The Park Society was founded in 1963 as an organization for descendants of Robert Parke, who was born in Lancashire, England in 1580. He arrived in Massachusetts in 1630 aboard the Winthrop fleet. Not that long after the Park Society's founding, the organization opened its membership to any descendant of any Park lineage, recognizing that not all Parks were descended from Robert Parke or even necessarily related to him. Because this was well before the age of the internet and the revolution in communication and information technology, membership was restricted for many years to those living in the US and Canada. For that reason, the database of lineage information compiled by the Society over the next 40 years or so was heavily weighted to information about Park individuals in North America. Many lineages could not trace their origins back to an immigrant ancestor, and those that could didn't always know much more than a country of origin. A small handful, like the Robert Parke lineage and several others, did know where their lines originated, and in a few even rarer cases, could identify one or more earlier generations in the British Isles. But these were definitely the exception to the rule for the most part. Likewise, the Parkes DNA Surname project came into being in 2003, a few years after the first DNA testing became available in 2000. Because family tree DNA is based in the United States, its early marketing was focused mainly on the US and Canada, and similar to the Park Society's lineage database, was almost exclusively comprised of participants in the Western Hemisphere for a good portion of the last 25 years. That has begun to change, and we're hoping to add to that trend by welcoming more test from outside the US and Canada. Because these two information databases, the Park Society's lineage information and the Parkes DNA Project's genetic identification of mainly North American lineages, our starting point has reflected the knowledge we have on hand at present. Though the descendants of many Park lineages that came to America had lost their knowledge of their earlier origins, the research in the book we're looking at helped offer some clues before we had the DNA tool available to us. Albion Seed, by the excellent historian David Hackett Fisher, describes the four main groups to come to America and contains valuable insight into what part of the British Isles certain immigrants came from and where those different groups tended to settle in the New World. Differing not only in their area of origin, they also differed from each other in religion, customs, family organization, and a number of other ways. Here on the left are the four folkways he describes, and in some cases we can see these reflected in the Park lineages in early America. I highly recommend this book, but for those who don't wish to delve quite that deeply, the Wikipedia article on the book gives a pretty good synopsis, and a link to that can be found on the resource page for this presentation, which will be available in the comments section of the YouTube video of today's meeting on the Park Society's YouTube channel. Well, let's begin our examination. Let's begin our examination of the British Isles with Ireland. Those of you who have researched your Irish roots are likely familiar with the 4 provinces of Ireland. Though there are Park lineages to be found in many parts of the island, a survey of the surname distribution reveals that our surname occurs most heavily in the northern part of the island, generally within the province of Ulster. The reason for this is reflected in the history of Ulster province. Many of you are familiar with that history, but for those who are not, here's a brief summary. Following the 9 Years' War between the Gaelic Irish and the English, the defeated Irish chiefs fled in 1607, and King James I of England, who was also James VI of Scotland, began the Ulster Plantation in 1609, a plan to import Protestant settlers to replace the native Irish who were Roman Catholic. Incidentally, for historical context, James I succeeded Queen Elizabeth I and was the King James of King James Bible fame. The Ulster Plantation covered most of Ulster province, but the counties of Antrim, Down, and Monaghan were settled privately in a similar fashion. Those imported settlers tended to be, though not exclusively, Scots and English from the northern counties, and among the Scots, mainly, though not exclusively, from lowland Scots. So here we see a blank outline map of the island of Ireland on the left and a blank outline map of Scotland on the right. Knowing that many settlers of the Ulster Plantation came from Scotland is helpful to know, but our next step is to identify which Parkes lineages appear in which Irish counties, and then where in Scotland they came from. So we narrow our focus within each by taking a look at the various counties and overlay them with our known information. Beginning with Ireland, here are the counties where we have Park lineages who have specific information about where they came from and who have DNA representation in the DNA project. As you can see, much like the surname representation being heavily weighted in the northern part of the island, so too is our current picture of DNA representation. You'll note that several genetic DNA groups have representation in more than one county. Whether that represents multiple immigrants from most likely Scotland, or migration within Ireland after immigration is still an open question. In some cases, with enough DNA test participants, we may be able to shed some light on this. Again, while the lower part of the island seems quite barren on this map, this does not mean that there were or are no Park lineages in these other counties. The Park Society does have lineage information leading to some of these other counties, but we have no DNA representation of them at this time. So the map for these countries remains empty at the moment. Moving on to the map of Scotland, we see quite a
Sorry.
You can see there are currently only 3 genetic groups represented. Letting somebody in here. There are only 3 genetic groups represented here with known specific locations within Scotland. Many other lineages in the Park Society database have Scottish origins, but either they have no specific location information or no DNA representation. The Group 8 location in Dumfriesshire appears to be a case of migration from Aberdeenshire, but we haven't been able to independently confirm the Aberdeenshire birth information of the earliest Dumfries Park ancestor in this lineage. Moving on to England, we see a slightly better representation, although still much room for improvement. I've included a bit of additional information here on my Group 8, showing what we currently believe may be the pattern of migration. Still subject to further testing and more research, but we know the Group 8 lineage in Cumberland came from Aberdeen to Carlisle, near the border of Scotland and not far from Dumfries. The Group 8 lineage in Westmoreland was there in the early 1700s, but the birthplace of the earliest known ancestor, born about 1695, is unknown, and could well have been in Aberdeenshire. Group 23 includes the lineage of Robert Parke, whose descendants founded the Parke Society. As we mentioned earlier, Robert Parke was born in Preston, Lancashire. Group 43 below that contains a Parke lineage that first appears in North Carolina in the late 1700s, but matches a participant with the Parker surname, whose line goes back to a Parker ancestor born in 1708 in Chantry, West Yorkshire, England. I'm probably mispronouncing that. Obviously, this is a case begging for more research and DNA participants. I remember chatting with an administrator for the Parker Surname Project a good many years ago at a DNA conference about whether we would eventually find more crossover between our surnames. But in the years since, we've seen very few instances, and even those are inconclusive as to whether the matches are due to a common ancestry that split into branches, adopting the two different surnames. There's so many questions there. Well, group 6 is a Parkes lineage that came to New Zealand from Staffordshire around 1850. It does not match the other known lineage with roots in Staffordshire and suggests there were 2 or possibly more genetically distinct Parke lineages in that area. I know there are 2 other lines, one in Australia and the other in New Zealand, which came from Staffordshire, but have not been represented in our DNA project. Adding those lineages to the mix could fill out the picture here. The other Staffordshire lineage is an interesting case. Group 42 contains an early Parkes lineage, that of Richard Parkes, who was born in Cambridge, Middlesex, Massachusetts in 1667. His origins are unknown, but his line matches genetically with 2 participants, both with the surname Pershouse, P-E-R-S-H-O-U-S-E, one who lives in South Africa and the other in Australia. This Pershouse lineage goes back to an Adam Pershouse born about 1595 in Staffordshire. From information provided by one of the Pershouse gentlemen, a publication offered the explanation for their surname as deriving from the practice of saying someone was of John Parke's house. And the Parke's house, perhaps due to the regional accent, I'm no expert in that area, may have sounded similar to Perk's house, and over time that became glided and morphed into Pershouse. Interesting phenomenon that would have probably escaped our attention completely if it were not for the DNA project. Group 45 is located in London, which is where the earliest ancestor is found. However, as is the case in most large cities, it's quite possible the ancestor came from another area in England. Having lived in New York City for nearly 40 years, I know it was rare to meet someone who was a true New Yorker, as many people in large cities find their way there for various reasons, and the same may be true in this case. Additional matching participants could shed more light on this. Group 32 has one participant whose earliest ancestor is James Parke, born 1754 in Cornwall. However, there are other Group 32 participants whose ancestors lived in Ireland, including both Wicklow and Leitrim, as well as another who lists Scotland as his ancestor's home. So take your pick. And finally, Group 38 represents the genetic group of Richard Parke, who was
alive. I'm looking all over for you. You
I
okay?
was out there just a few minutes ago. I just joined the Park Society.
Can we mute our microphones because we're joining in?
All right. I didn't know you were on the meeting.
Okay, so finally, the Group 38 represents the genetic group of Roger Parke, who, as we said, was born in Cartmel, Lancashire in 1648. And this lineage is known in the Parke Society as lineage K. All in all, it's not a bad start for representation in England, but much room for improvement in the coming months and years. There we go. Now, just for fun, and because I enjoy this kind of thing, I thought it would be interesting to take a look at a snapshot in time and compare the prevalence of our surname in various countries, and go even further to break it down by the spelling variations in our surname. In our Park Society's given name index, we don't bother to include a field for the Park surname. As we know, especially in earlier years, the same individual surname could be spelled differently, sometimes within the same document. However, by looking at the numbers for different spellings here, it does give us an idea of how popular the different spellings were in each country, and could, in the absence of more specific information about origins, provide at least some general guidance in terms of a country of origin. I chose the 1901 censuses for the various countries in the British Isles, as surname spelling tended to have settled into a more stable state by then. And in the next slide, we'll also take a look at Canada in 1901 and the US in 1900. We won't dwell on this here in the interest of time, but when you're viewing this as a video, you can always pause here to study the numbers in more detail if this interests you. And here we continue the survey for Canada and the US, and we'll leave this screen up long enough so that if you're watching it on the video, you can easily pause the video and study the numbers in greater detail. So that gives you an idea of what we know at present and how we were able to get there using a combination of lineage information combined with DNA results. Obviously, we want to expand both our database of lineage information on more Park families everywhere, and especially in the British Isles, and lots more DNA participants to help guide us to our ancestral and genetic homelands. So how are we going to go about that? Well, the ways of building the database are several. We can begin by looking at online trees on WikiTree, Ancestry, Family Search, MyHeritage. We can even Google individuals and find information. I know we all do this all the time, and I recognize that when we're looking at online trees, we have to take everything we see, sometimes with a large grain of salt, but it's a starting place. As the Park Society is basically a clearinghouse for lineage information contributed by members and through other sources, we don't independently research and verify every single fact in a lineage that's a member submits. Hopefully they have provided sources for their information, but what we do, as Tad says, is conduct a reasonableness survey or test. In other words, do the facts in front of us make sense? Because we all know, we've seen online trees where a female is listed as giving birth at the age of 8 or the age of 88, something that clearly, obviously, could not be true. And yet there it is online. People still put it out there. And unfortunately, we've all had experiences of contacting some of those people, and nothing changes. So, but still, these are valuable insights into where the database can grow. The other method is to extract records from online sources, marriages, birth, baptism, death records, from census information, and compile them into databases for ourselves. And we'll take a look at an example of that in just a moment. And using all of those extracted records and online trees, we can begin to create family groups from all those record sources and begin a source of tracking down to the present time to look for DNA candidates. And that leads us to DNA candidate search. And the first method is what we call reverse genealogy. We all know that we're taught as genealogists to begin with ourselves or with the present generation and work our way back generation to generation as far as we can into the past. With reverse genealogy, we're going to do just the opposite. We find a family group or individual or couple in the past that we think might be related. And then we use all of these record sources to begin to bring that lineage forward in time with the, of course, ultimate goal of finding, for our purposes, a DNA candidate, a male Park descendant. Another method is to look for and contact male DNA candidates from online trees, such as WikiTree or Ancestry and so forth. And we have somebody attending the meeting here today, George Park, who I stumbled upon in WikiTree just a few weeks ago. We got in touch through their messaging system and learned that he had tested, and he has an upgraded test in the process now, and we're hoping to get his initial results within the next 4 to 6 weeks. So that method works. We've got proof right here. Another method is to contact male candidates from various social media. I spend a lot of time on Facebook tracking down people and trying to approach them that way. I've even used LinkedIn, which for me has no other purpose. LinkedIn is still a mystery to me as to why it exists, but if it works for finding somebody, I'll use it. And finally, just appealing to Park's descendants to any means who may be related to DNA candidates. They may not be bearers of the Park surname, but have the Park family line in their tree and may know cousins or relatives who could do a DNA test. So, where are we? So, here, we're going to take an example now and just sort of look at how that process works of compiling some records and then working with reverse genealogy and trying to find someone present day who can do a DNA test. Because of our recent connection, Bill Park, who's here today, popped up in the DNA database a few months ago now and gave us this genetic connection in my group 8 to Aberdeenshire. I have been extracting some baptisms from that area, as well as all of the marriage information, and putting them into spreadsheets. So here we're taking a look at the birth baptisms. We see a number of baptisms of children in the early 1800s, 1820s, with a father variously called Robison, or Robertson Park. Those are all the same individual, as we'll see from a later census information. And we chose the first male Park that we could see here, a James Park, who was baptized on the 14th of February, 1822. And the location is one of the small towns in the area that we know Bill Park's Park line came from. So looking at this family in the 1841 Scotland census, we see the family of Robertson Park. There's the son James, along with some of the sisters who were baptized and were in that database. And now we know his wife's name was Elspeth Park. We have not found a marriage record for those two, but we're still working on that. An extraction of the information for Robertson here tells us that he was born in Aberdeenshire and that he was a blacksmith, as was his son James, we find out in later censuses. Going back to the marriage database, we now see that son James married an Isabella Nicholson in 1845, again in Marriage Place, one of those small towns in that area. A few years forward, there's the baptism of a Robertson Park, a young Robertson Park, son of James. So we can see he was following a very common naming pattern of naming the firstborn son after the father's father. And here they are in the 51 census, down at the bottom, James and Isabella Park, Margaret, and the son we just saw, Robertson Park. On the previous page in the census, we find James's parents, the elderly Robertson Park and Elspeth. And forwarding in time, we see that the elder Robertson Park died in 1870, buried in Lawnmay. Again, that's the same area. And from Scotland's People records, a little bit of additional information on his death record is that his mother's maiden name was Reed. So another clue as to figuring out who his parents were. The 1871 census, we find his widow, Elspeth Park, listed living with a grandson. Her address is Smith Cottage, which makes sense since she was a blacksmith's widow. So where they lived was a blacksmith's cottage. Coming forward a few more years, we see the younger Robertson Park arriving in New York City from Glasgow, born in Scotland, the right date. We know it's probably our guy. And in 1880, we find a marriage record for him in Fall River, Massachusetts. Again, with the right parents named, and he married a Catherine E. Roy. And from here, we continued to follow available record sources, bringing us to the present day. And we did succeed in locating a male descendant of this lineage. I reached out to him about 3 weeks ago, but have not had a response. I'll follow up soon, and if I still get no response, I'll reach out to his son or try to find another male descendant. It can be very frustrating to put so much time, effort.
Can somebody mute Tanya's phone? It keeps interfering. There's sound coming from Tanya's phone.
Hey, Ken, you can mute since you're, I tried to mute, but I couldn't do it.
Okay. I'll have to expand that. This is challenging my skills. Well, now it's disappeared on my screen. So I'll just plunge ahead because we're almost done. Again, I haven't heard, and it's frustrating to know that DNA is out there within easy reach, but it's just out of reach. But the same process can be repeated many times over, building up our database by extracting and compiling information about park lineages in the various locations in all the British Isles countries. And along the way, sometimes we experience the good fortune of having a DNA participant or a new Park Society member pop up out of nowhere and have them open new doors, sometimes doors we weren't even aware existed. Well, that's our path forward. And if any of you wish to help in this endeavor, please get in touch and we'll talk about how best to go about it. So I thank those of you here and those watching later who have helped in this adventure, either by adding valuable research information or supplying your DNA to add to the Surname project. We've gotten this far with the help of many individuals, and it will take an army of new recruits to carry us forward. I hope you'll continue to keep abreast of new developments and support us whenever you can. And finally, while many researchers are focused on their own particular family tree, we here at the Park Society and in the DNA Project see many individual trees. And as you know, when you see a lot of individual trees, then take a few steps back. What do you see then? A forest. And especially in the British Isles, where did you find a forest? In a park, of course. That's how we got our surname. So here at the Park Society, we like to say, our park is full of family trees. Well, thanks so much for your time and attention. I'll turn things back over to Susan now. If you have questions or comments or wish to speak about any other topic, these meetings are open to discussion about any issues. So Susan, over to you. I'll get rid of this shared screen and we're back.
Thanks so much, Ken. This was great. And, you know, I invite, you know, folks to, you know, certainly reach out to us. You know, one way, Ken, you know, my first question to you sort of on this topic is, how can people help? I mean, I know that we've had a lot of participants in our DNA project, but could you tell us sort of your thoughts on if we have folks who haven't tested to the full, what are you looking for? What's going to help us the most as far as the testing, as far as which one?
Well, in terms of the DNA testing, always if you have cousins or if you've tested yourself, as we know in the big Y testing, which is where we go, that's the ultimate Y DNA test right now, and it gives us the most information. There is something called the rule of 3, and that is to test yourself. Rule 2 is to test a close relative, either father, brother, son, first cousin, uncle, somebody like that. Rule 3 is a more distant cousin, like in the fourth cousin range, or any of the variations of that. So anytime you can help fill out a picture on that, it's helpful. Another method is simply being able to help fund some of these tests, because they're very expensive. They're sometimes prohibitively expensive. And we hope someday to be able to help out with that, and we'll work on that. In terms of the lineage information growing and being able to track down some of these unrepresented British Isles lineages, the method I described could be repeated by others, and we could talk and coordinate so that we kind of follow the same method. But I've simply been going on Ancestry primarily and downloading all of the marriages in, say, Aberdeenshire, and putting them into a database, which they can then be searched, and it's a good way of doing that. Same with birth and baptism, same with any available death records. And then we can begin to put those people into family groups and follow the lineage down, put those in our database, and ultimately, hopefully, to find DNA candidates to get those lines represented. So there's plenty of work that can be shared. And if you
and I think it's important to note, we're looking for, so it's going to be male DNA. It's going to be a male Parks. So like in my case, I descend from Robert Park. Obviously, my last name is Van Allen, but I'm many names removed from. So it's going to be, we're going to need to be looking for male Parks. So, for our members who had a maiden name Parks, if your brother, father, male cousins, haven't tested, that would be an area to go into. But just to be clear, I mean, obviously women can test too, but it isn't going to help us make real inroads in the information we're looking for.
Yeah. Our project, our Surname project, is based on the Y-DNA test. That does not mean that autosomal tests such as Ancestry or 23andMe or the Family Finder at FTDNA are of no use. We know that that's a good way to make a connection to a line where it's possible. But of course, the autosomal is a little bit harder to decipher when you have matches, and it ultimately will only get you back about 4 or 5 generations reliably, sometimes a little bit further. Whereas the Y-DNA, like a mitochondrial test, follows a direct male mitochondrial, direct female line back into almost infinity. So
my problem was the fact that I found out during the DNA process that my grandfather was illegitimate. I didn't know I was a Park, did I? In Northern Ireland, until I DNA tested. So this will crop up in other places as well in the lineages.
Well, and Gay's example, her test, her brother's test showing up, led to a great breakthrough for my genetic group, because we had no specific location in Ireland of where our Park's DNA came from until her brother's test came up and gave us a location in Armagh. Then we could begin, and we did, research other park lines in Armagh, found more DNA candidates to test, and went from there.
And we've actually got back to an individual farmhouse, I believe.
So I someday may work a presentation on, and I'm tentatively going to title it "Those Perilous NPEs," those perilous NPEs. Ignore them at your peril, because we have in my own group 2 or 3 NPEs. Karina's line is another example that have led to real breakthroughs. And so, every surname project has them, and simply because somebody shows up with a different surname but they match our Park DNA, that can be very worth the effort and time to look into those. So maybe we'll do that in a few months.
Can I ask you a question, Ken?
Of
because
course.
I'm desperately trying to find living descendants of the rogue Alexander Park who impregnated great grandma in Australia, and I've gone forward and got about 2 generations forward. Is there any point at all in finding more descendants from Alexander and getting them tested in Australia?
Oh, sure. And
Right.
it's not because of lack of interest that I haven't tried to reach out to them yet, but
No,
definitely.
I can't find them yet, but I can try if you wish.
But yeah, we know that the Alexander Parks, for instance, who was the father of Gay's grandfather, shortly after that incident, married and began a family in Armagh, and then migrated to Australia. And
We
so,
got both women pregnant in the same year.
yeah, well, he was at the right time of life and had no time to waste, or whatever. But yeah, it's definitely worth
Thank you.
following up on. Yeah,
I'll carry on that one then.
yeah.
Well, unrelated to the park trees, but Ken, great presentation. Really appreciated you. This closing line is great, because I think there's a lot of things you can learn from. We've been able to learn from each other's journeys trying to figure out our trees, but then we find these great overlaps. Only because of the story you just shared. I actually, our whole family found out we have an oldest cousin that we didn't know existed. My dad's brother had a child and out of wedlock, and the mother, they gave him up for adoption. He obviously knew he was adopted. He has a sister who's adopted. And he's done a lot of good work in his life as a Navy pilot, and just good person, science teacher. And he's over in Iowa trying to figure out what he's doing. He did the DNA stuff. And my younger cousin, just won in a raffle, like some charity raffle, 23andMe, does the thing on a lark, and there's a ping on the new cousin found out there's this. There's a connection, but what was crazy is I'm getting a text message from my aunt. Do you have an email address of cyhawk.com or something? I go, no, that's not me. Is because that was the oldest cousin. He's a Iowa State Hawkeye fan. A Cyclone fan, and my cousin, my known cousin, when he did the 23andMe, found out there was a cousin who was also in the database, and they were trying to figure out which cousin was it. And that's how we actually found our oldest cousin. Our oldest cousin knew of us. He just didn't want to approach us because of the awkwardness of this stuff. But it allowed our family to find it. So these DNA tests have a lot of unknown surprises that they'll come with great joy, because these aren't ancestors. These are actually, we get to, and he's now part of our family for the last 5 years. So it's been great.
Wonderful.
It's good. And unfortunately, there's a mix. I mean, those incidents can work out very well, and they can also go south. And we've heard of examples of both. Yeah. But
well, he's had both mixtures, because his father, he was able to meet his father, but my aunt wanted nothing to do with him and pushed him out. So he never met his half siblings. But until now, the father passed away, and the daughter of that father, she came back, and she actually met and spent time with him. So they have gotten somewhat reunited.
Good, good. Nice story.
I was
so-
watching some good YouTube about these type of projects, and I'm glad to see the Park Societies has the bridge, because I saw there was some really great lectures going on in Ireland and Scotland of folks who are in the home country who are finding out that they can connect with a lot of these Americans who have done all this research. But I'm glad to see this. This is really insightful.
Mm.
Ken,
yes.
if I could jump in. Yeah, just to follow on from the lineage theme of your talk, a lot of the lines go back to Aberdeenshire, Northern Ireland and Dumfriesshire, etc. But then you could say, well, what happened before Aberdeenshire? And if you just look up where does the surname Park come from where I'm sitting, it does say from France. And
from Normandy, probably.
Well, not quite sure, but areas that France controlled that went all the way over to Germany. And when I did my initial DNA test with Ancestry, it turned out it said I was 5% French. And I have actually met French people with the name P-A-R-C. So, it kind of confirms that a little bit. And the fact I've got some DNA from that area.
Let me just interrupt you. If you ever meet them again, sit on their lap and swab their cheeks.
Yeah, well, it's probably the only way you can do things, because all their records have been destroyed with various European wars.
But God, I would
going back centuries, not just
I would love to have some DNA from some of those people.
Yeah. So
can I do a tiny interrupt on that, Bill? Where are yours from in the UK again?
No, well, from Scotland.
From Scotland, right?
Yeah, they come from Aberdeenshire. Right. And so I mean, I see your lovely layout of the park name, but I'm afraid you're going to add PARC to the list of variations, and then add in Europe as part of.
I'm just doing
the
some
next
research.
talk.
I'm just doing some research on a DNA results from my granddaughter, which has nothing to do with the Park Society. But I've got back to 2 generations before, surprisingly, William the Conqueror, and then even further back to the Vikings that preceded the Normans in France, and they were from Norway. And I think our IM253 DNA could have originated in Scandinavia. And I'm thinking that the Vikings did own part of the north of Scotland up until about the 12th century. So our previous ones, we could have originally been Vikings.
Yeah, the other thing I've noticed is that the lineage that goes back to Lancashire. Well, there seems to be a lot of parks moving from Aberdeenshire down to Lancashire, including my own line. That's where they went via Carlisle, which is Cumbria, down to Lancashire. And of all the towns they could have gone to, or all the counties in England, they ended up in the Preston area of Lancashire. So it seems to be, well-trodden path. And I think you mentioned that it was Robert Park. He came from that area too. So, that's, I guess the whole, one of the main aims of this, apart from making a great family of parks, is to find out where we all came from, year zero, as it were.
Yeah.
A lot of that was to come down for the burgeoning industrial revolution and the textiles in Lancashire.
Yeah, and they probably were kicked out of Scotland. So the other thing I found, a lot of religion comes into this, and my parks are all part of the Episcopal Church, and as distinct from Church of Scotland or the Presbyterians. So that, so even though there's a lot of very similar names, they were very reluctant to swap from one church to the other. So you could do a lot of filtering just on that basis. It's quite handy.
Another aspect of the different spellings of our name, while I was compiling these databases from Aberdeenshire, there's a family, especially one family during a period, who are listed in the records as P-E-R-K, later on as P-A-R-K, Parke or Perk. And indeed, I think, have at least one Perks, P-E-R-K-E-S, male in our DNA project, not in our group. But I do think that is or could be, and that's why I put some of those name spellings on those charts there. Just someday, maybe finding out if there are more that are genetically related, because the spelling is very similar, very similar.
Going up further in my stream, Andrew, there is an Andrew Perk. So yeah, there is whether that was an error, just a spelling error, or if that was, but it's very difficult to find records further than that. But just going on with records, you were talking about you weren't able to find marriage records for that couple. What do they call them? The Kirk session records. You'll find there about marriages, etc. Because on my grandmother's side, the Mackey side, there was a Jane McIntosh born of an Elizabeth will, and we didn't know this until I happened to come across this, or I knew about Elizabeth, had an inkling about Elizabeth will. But I happened to come across the Kirk session records in, I think it was Aberdeenshire somewhere, Aberdeen somewhere, and where she was brought in front of the Kirk session because she was pregnant out of wedlock. And she had to tell them who the father was, and he was a David McIntosh. So that's how I've managed to establish who that was. But yeah, so the only, as I say, there's a lot of marriages in Scotland that will not show up on the records because they were just like common law, as we call it these days. So, which is a bit frustrating, because normally on the marriage records you can pick up so much information from the parents and on witnesses who they may be. But however, that is the way it is with what we got to live with.
Did you are you able to access those records through, is it Scotland's People? Okay. Yeah. I haven't spent a lot of time in there. I have some, but I wanted to get as much as I could from Ancestry first, because it's more easily available, and then I'll go in, and where I see something that I don't have from the others, I'll be looking in there. Yeah.
Scotland's People, it costs you got to buy credits, but I mean it works out about 50 pence on some records and a bit more expensive. It's actually worth it, because I found a lot of records on there for my side. Yeah, I mean it's we could sit here and you could spend the rest of your life investigating. It's quite incredible how it's time consuming it is, but I love it. It's very interesting.
And of course, one of the dangers of just simply downloading this transcribed records, say in Ancestry, you're not seeing the actual documents. So, if you could see the handwriting, you might have a different interpretation and that sort of thing. But
I think it's on Scotland's People. They do have links into a course that you can do on the Scottish handwriting. So that you can try and decipher because it looks like shorthand when you look at it.
Well, a lot of the Scottish records on Scotland's People are transcribed anyway, so they're not the originals, aren't they?
Yeah, you actually see the handwritten ones, the originals.
Yeah.
Ken, you were proposing a visit to Aberdeenshire next year. Do you want to talk about that, or is that top secret still?
No, not top secret, but no, it's just this is a general group, but for our Group 8 genetic group, which you are part of, and George and Wilma, and if I'm missing somebody else,
me
or Tom. We are proposing, probably we're looking at in August over a weekend, a gathering in Peterhead, which is very near those small towns and area where your family is known to be. And we're going to get together and get as many people from, and Gay, I forgot her, but get as many people from Ireland and the UK and Scotland and the US and Canada, anybody if we make contact with some of those Australian cousins in the meantime, it should be a grand gathering, and I'm really looking forward to that.
Yeah, I guess it doesn't have to be just Group 8, because as we see, Group 8 went to Dumfriesshire and then to Northern Ireland and then to the US and, via Lancashire as well. So, that kind of, it kind of all points to that was place zero, as it were. Well, apart from the French aspect that we haven't quite proven yet. So I guess anyone could, show up, I suppose.
Well, and John, who's here, John Park, Group 34, has done something similar. He's already beaten us to the punch. He did a gathering last year in Antrim in Northern Ireland, and is bravely planning another gathering in the U.S. Either next year or the year after. So yeah, the happy result of a lot of this research is that we can find so many cousins spread out in such wide, disparate areas, and yet be able to come together and not just virtually, because this is nice, but we all know it's not the same as meeting somebody face to face, being in the same room, and being on some of the same ground that we know our ancestors walked. It's very different. Yeah.
We, my brother and I went to Scotland in about 3 years ago. We could get $400 tickets from Omaha to Inverness. And the Henderson lineage, we've been able to draw all the way back to Pennycook, south of Edinburgh. And so my brother and I got on a bus from Edinburgh down to Pennycook, and got to walk the streets, go to the old kirk, and see the graveyards with all these Henderson names on it, and got to see and walk a crossing of a river that has been inhabited since the Stone Ages, and you get to read about this stuff, but to be in it, and then to put up a wee drum and toast your ancestors on the land and to be around other people, it was very fascinating. So if you're thinking about it,
I have no idea what you're talking about there.
wee dram of whiskey. Have a little whiskey.
Not have a wee drum, laddie.
Never touches my lips. Never touches my
well,
lips.
if you're going to Scotland, you're going to have to reconsider that idea.
I'm joking.
But it is to your point. If anyone's thinking about doing this trip, I would highly encourage it. It's just fascinating to walk land and be part of that, and you get to see and think, wow, somebody ahead of me was here, and it would be even greater to be able to be around folks who are cousins. So
definitely.
So Ken, I just wanted to let you know that the Y-DNA, the big Y for my husband, John, just finalized yesterday.
I saw it pop in, but I haven't had time to get in there. I was getting ready for this, but you'll hear.
So let's get ready to rumble.
Yeah. Anybody else, or on any other topic that you want to talk about other than politics?
Oh no, don't talk about that.
No, we're not going there.
Yeah, I'm desperately waiting for those results. I keep looking.
Oh, it takes forever.
Yeah.
And I have seen talk online that more and more they seem to be having to rerun tests, which really? I've not experienced that much within our group, but we've had some of it, and I hope that's not a trend for the future. But you just have to keep busy with other things, and someday it pops in there. So
because I don't know what the heck to do with it when I get it.
Well, that's that's our end of the deal. We'll see.
I'm just so interested to see you. You know, it's just even the rest of the family also meeting. Anyway, just a message to Bill. Bill, sorry I haven't emailed you. Things just got on top of me, and I must admit I only thought about it yesterday. Well, oh, bloody hell, I haven't emailed Bill.
Oh yeah, well, I'd look forward to email, yeah, and see if our trees somehow overlap in some way.
Oh, who knows? I mean, my uncle, my dad's twin brother, was William Parke as well. He was a Bill Parke. So it seems like William is a popular name in the
So
Parke
I
family.
can definitely, trace myself back to 1765 with great certainty. How far have you got back in years terms?
Oh goodness. Unsourced 1694, I think it was.
Oh right, excellent.
But you know, it's, as I said, that isn't definite because there's no sources. So I've gotten to a stage now. If I can't find a source for a person, I delete them from the tree until because if you can't prove that person's not there, then you can't prove that person is part of your family. Get them out of the tree, because that's where all these mistakes in the trees come from. Because I had a whole area which, when I first started, the case was look back as far as you could, as quickly as possible, and I had people in there who had absolutely no relation to me, but it's from other people's trees. So yeah, I think unsourced 1694.
I wish there were more people like you.
Well, you've got to be ruthless. I mean, the fact is, if there are no sources for that person, remove them from your tree. Even if it is supposedly a sister or a child within a large family, they may definitely have been that person's son, daughter, but if there's no source, get rid of them. I think it's WikiTree that taught me that. Because they're pretty good with saying, right, if it's not, if there's no source, and also what's that genealogy, the code?
Oh, the code of ethics.
Yes, where they, if it's not source, you can't say that somebody started the family if there is no source. So if there's no source, then they shouldn't be there.
Terry could probably speak to that. She's one of our few in the Park Society certified genealogists. She's shaking her head no. She's not going to wade into this.
A lot of responsibility for that goes back to the original IGI from the Mormons that they created, because some of the things they collected was they were allowed to collect all the surnames within a given area, whether they were related or not. And they were some of the batch numbers they uploaded. And then after that, they had a formula that if you were married in such a place, you were automatically married there in the same place 30 years previously. And they were responsible for lots of mistakes creeping into the early trees.
Family search as well. You go onto the trees there. I actually believe, and I'll tell you, this is just a funny little thing that I did. I just went back and back and back and back and back as far as I could with family search. And you know who I'm related to?
Go on.
Jesus Christ.
Oh, of course.
I'm serious. I actually found that going through, I was Jesus of Nazareth. And I am not telling a lie. This is the genuine truth. I've got it. I've got a screenshot of it somewhere.
I've discovered this.
Supposedly shows.
I've discovered something very, very similar this weekend, because I've been going back on the Viking line at the moment, and I've got back to really proven ancestral sort of people that did exist and left a historical trail. But you keep following that, going back and back and back, and I'm back to Odin.
Yeah.
And the Norse mythology, it's similar to
I didn't realize
my DNA links all go back quite strongly to the Vikings, which I'm quite proud of.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that I was muted. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. What I said was no documentation does not count. You can't, it just doesn't work. You got to have that documentation.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I apologize if my screen share has been up all this time. I didn't realize that until Dave and Deb.
That's
But
okay.
hopefully we're back here. I've been seeing you. I don't know, but technologically challenged. That's my name.
You do a great job, Ken. Thank you so very much.
Well,
yeah,
we do the best we can with what we have.
I was just thinking, you know, people that are trying to get back to places in England, you know, in the British Isles kind of thing. If there are some family history societies in local areas can often be very, very helpful. I mean, I know that we've got, as our society in Cheshire, we have lots of sources in our libraries that aren't available on the internet. And if people wanted to get back and find somebody that's a local treasure in the society, they can often help giving geographical background and things to your search that can help you to put them together.
It's a very good point. Yeah.
I think is the Aberdeenshire Family History Society. They're based in Aberdeen, which I think is, I am a member, but yeah, they can look up stuff, so they are pretty good. So yeah, these societies are amazing.
We exchange a journal with them, and I upload their journals to our society webpage. You know, so yeah, I must go and read some of them.
Yeah, because they do a lot of memorial inscriptions.
That's right. We do a lot of that work.
We, if I have time to sort of look into that, it's going a little far afield, but Bill has proposed there's a state there outside of Peterhead, Cremon-Magate, I believe it's pronounced, I may be wrong, but the couple who own it now hire it out for events, and we may try to do that, but it was designed by a man, I can't remember his first name, but his last name was Milne, M-I-L-N-E. And if any of you done any park research in Aberdeen, there are a lot of intermarriages between Milnes and parks. So apparently he died without issue, so it wouldn't be any kind of a direct connection, but I'm sure it has to be the same family that designed that estate. It was started, I think, in 1820. It's not super old. 1820, finished about 1825. That's
another thing to bear in mind, though, Ken. I've just found the park name will eventually go back in a lot of times to the person who looked after the deer park for the Lord of the Manor. He would be the park keeper. But I've just been looking near Peterhead, and there's a little place not far called New Deer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, my family from there.
New Deer and Old Deer.
Yeah.
And there are parks records from those locations as well. You know,
I wonder if they could be the looking after the parks to stop the people from poaching in the medieval times there.
Yeah, my park family is from Fraserburgh, New Deer, Old Deer.
Right.
So yeah.
I had to look at where Peterhead was on the map because I didn't know, and just spotted New Deer right really close.
Right on the coast north of Aberdeen. Yeah.
Yep. Found it.
Ken, I'm going to have to dash, unfortunately, but thanks for your presentation. And
well, I'm so
nice
glad
to meet you all there. Fantastic, and look forward to the meeting certainly next year, if not before.
Sounds good to me. Thanks for coming, and thank you all.
Before we all go, just a reminder, every other month, we're going to be meeting on this timetable. So next month, which is March, we will be meeting on Sunday at 3 p.m. Eastern time in the United States. But then in April, we will be back to Sunday, 1 p.m. Eastern time, this time period. So, you know, for those of you all who joined us today from places further afield, by all means, please join us in 2 months. And if you want to stay up really late, we'd love to see you at next month's meeting, but we're going to keep this up so that we can get greater participation from all of our members and see how that works.
What's
And
the
if
date?
it-
The first Sunday of the month? You mean
First
the
Sunday of the month.
Okay.
And if the time doesn't work for you in whatever location you are, we are, recording them, and we have a Park Society YouTube channel, and I'll try to get this one up there early next week. And I said there, I put together a little resource page for some of what we talked about, and I'll put that in a link to that in the comments section. So.
Great.
Well, thank you guys.
Thanks,
for
everybody.
organizing.
Thank
Appreciate it.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So,
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Ken.
thanks, everybody.
Great
So
Good
Ken,
to
do
see
we want to
everybody.
stay on?
Great to have so many from across the pond.
Yes.
Definitely.
Yeah, I've really enjoyed it. And thanks, Ken, for suggesting this today. It's been really
Yeah,
worthwhile.
absolutely.
Well, the first of many.
We're always looking for new members.
Yes.
We're always looking for new members.
Oh, you'll hear from us. You'll hear from us. Don't worry.
Okay.